Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Issues of the Heart podcast. I'm your host, Brother Kobe.
And I'm Rogers.
Dr. Graza.
Yeah, and again, we're greeted by a special guest, and we want to continue our discussion and ask different questions that may be on people's minds, and try to get counsel and direction and understanding what to do and where to go. I know there's a lot of things that perplex people, and it seems in this day and age, and I had a conversation with somebody that I don't know if it's through the explosion of the internet that people are able to go look up any Tom, Dick, and Harry on the internet, and everybody has an opinion. Everybody is a scholar. Everybody is a doctor without going to school. Everybody is an expert in certain areas if you let the internet tell it. And so there's a lot of ideas out there regarding health, regarding what to do in these different areas. And one of the things I understand is some people feel like, especially in the Black community, for some reason we don't feel like, and I know there's a history behind that, but they don't want to go to the doctor, and they feel like, well, if I feel healthy, then I don't need to go to see a doctor or a physician or get a checkup. I feel fine. I don't feel like nothing's wrong with me. Nothing's broken. I'm not coughing up blood. None of these things are going on. So if I feel fine, then do I need to go see a physician? Do I need to go get checkups?
That's a wonderful question. Thank you, Brother Kobe. In fact, that question, you'll find that whether inside the church or even outside of the church, that question is really significant because a lot of people ask that. Even our brothers and sisters who don't believe in a God as we do, have no faith-based practice, they wonder about these things. But let's take a look at this question. It says, I feel pretty good, like Brother Kobe was saying. We say these things, I feel pretty good, so why should I even bother? Wait until it's broken and then go, right? That's the sentiment. That's a sentiment. The difficulty with that question is the same way as the principles that we find in something like James chapter 1. Okay, so until why should I go to God? Why should I go to church? I haven't been doing anything bad. I haven't done anything wrong. And that's the same mentality. I haven't done anything wrong, so why should I go read my Bible? Why should I go ask for forgiveness? Why should I speak with my brethren who are wanting to follow the righteous path, who want to stay on the straight and narrow? James reminds us that if we fail of looking upon the law, looking on the standard of spiritual health, if you will, if we fail of comparing ourselves to that, we'll think we're okay. We'll forget that we have been saved from the disease of sin and that God has given us a chance to be spiritually healthy. In fact, what that means is that if you fail of comparing yourself with the standard of health, you'll believe that you're okay, that you don't need a savior, that you don't need forgiveness. I'm fine. Look, God hasn't struck me down. I don't have cancer. My kids are going to the local Adventist church. I attend here. I'm not only giving tithe, I'm giving second tithe. And in fact, brother, don't say anything. I'm teaching Sabbath school once a month. My wife she's headed to Dorcas. We got everything going until that individual looks upon the law of liberty and says, hey, hold on a second. This thing says that I could be lacking. Unless that happens, they won't know where they're ill. They won't know to look for a savior. So when somebody says, I'm doing fine, at the doctor's office, even if we don't buy into the therapy of treating the disease, the doctor still has the best analysis for what kind of things are going wrong. How do I know that? Because even without believing in a God, they're going to take a look at all the different all the different levels within our body and saying, hey, when we see these things rise, it shows us that these kind of things can be a problem in the future. Those of you who can read the weather, Jesus said, don't you know that these things are coming down the pipe? Those of you who say, hey, like they look upon the horizon and they see the clouds coming and they say, hey, we're expecting rain soon. Oh, I don't feel like If we hold that same mentality, oh, I don't feel like anything's going on. It's perfectly dry. Why should I look forward to this thing that you say is a come? No, we see the signs. We've done this before. We've looked. And especially for somebody in the Black community, do you know that 60% more than the regular average across the United States, 6% more have high blood pressure? Okay, so the problem with high blood pressure is, does anybody know, those, you don't have to raise your hands because I can't see you, but does anybody know exactly how blood pressure feels? Blood pressure feels. Exactly. It doesn't give any sign that anything's going wrong until the last bit, and then it's too late. While there's something they're able to do, you can't feel it. Somebody can say, oh, I felt my blood pressure go up. That's just their tension in their muscles. They're concerned, they have anxiety. But if you have high blood pressure and you're sitting by the sofa watching your favorite 3ABN, that blood pressure is now forcing that heart to one day fail in the future, forcing those kidneys to one day fail in the future, and you won't know. You won't know those things. You don't know what questions to ask about yourself. All you think is, I can get up, I can go to the bathroom fine, I can stand up in the shower, I can eat my food without using extra dentures, I'm fine. Why do I have to? Because you don't know what questions to ask. And just the same way that the sinner doesn't know what questions of righteousness to ask himself unless he looks at the law of liberty, unless that happens, Christ says the people who are ill, they're the ones that need a physician. The physician knows what questions to ask you to say, hey, are these a problem? These are. So we can't use our own gauge of how I feel. That same way, we can't use the own gauge of how I feel in order to know that Christ has saved us. We must go to the standard of righteousness and say, hey, you need to check my out. You need to show me. You need to be the one to tell me. See, the same way when Peter was finally converted, he didn't say, yeah, I'm fine. No, I'm going to defend you, right? Before, when Christ said, yeah, all of you are going to betray me. No, I'm not going to do it. He had his own idea of spiritual health, the same way we have our own idea of physical health. But at the end, when he was converted, what was his answer when Jesus said, Peter, do you love me more than these? His answer wasn't, man, I'm healthy. His answer was, oh, great physician, you're the one that tells me. You tell me. You tell me if I'm healthy and I will believe you. Mary said the same thing. See, at the end of it all, we don't say, hey, I'm spiritually healthy. No, we know. The person who is walking next to Christ every day, his true answer is, Father, only you will lead. And if I am saved, it is because of your mercy. We go to the doctor every year to say, hey, how have you been doing? You tell me if I'm doing okay. And then I'll be confident that we can continue. Versus you tell me what's wrong, and then we take a look. We re-examine our diet, re-examine our habits, re-examine these things, because I don't know what questions to ask about. I don't know what blood to check. I don't know what blood pressure I'm supposed to be, at. And if you have a godly physician, they should have known you over the years and say, hey, brother, how are things going? Hey, this is that time that we're starting to see a little bit more risk. Yes, you've been doing the right thing, but now you're 50. That prostate really needs to be checked. Why? Because before it becomes a problem, if we take care of it first, we can at least address it. So some of these things we can address before it becomes a problem, just the same way as the husbandman of the tree said, hey, before this tree finally gets chopped down, let's take a look at it. Let's examine it. Let's put let's dung it and trim the branches before it becomes this dead branch that's cumbering the ground. Before that happens, because if it was up to the tree would have said, I'm fine. What are you talking about? Look, I got my branches. Hey, I got my leaves. I'm okay. We have an idea of our own righteousness that is incorrect. And unless we go to someone who is the standard of righteousness, then we can know, hey, where else do we need a savior? As we go and realize, hey, I'm doing fine, we go to the doctor and say, hey, you tell me. You tell me, am I doing fine? Is my blood pressure okay? Are those kidneys still working the way they think? Because we don't know, we don't realize this. Did you know that the kidneys, both of them together, they can die completely? 90% of those organs can fail before it starts to show symptoms. What? That means if you decide that your kidneys are okay just based on the way you feel, you could be 90% dead before you start to feel things or even see things incorrectly.
You
Now
know
what?
what's
Go
yeah.
ahead.
I was thinking about somebody who was talking because, you know, I drive, and before, you know, driving school buses and driving trucks, you know, when you're driving a vehicle, you don't want to wait. That's why we do daily inspections. You
Ooh,
don't want to wait till the vehicle starts smoking, or, you know, you start hearing your brakes squeak
right,
and all those
right,
things. You want to catch it beforehand, because a lot of times if you catch it before, afterwards, it can be too far gone to kind of remedy or deal
right,
with a situation. And
right.
so I think about this, and this scripture. It says, Psalm 139, search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my thoughts, and see if there be any wicked way in me. And
Amen.
so we use that in the spiritual sense, but in the physical sense, hey, search yourself. You know,
Hey,
what do they tell women to do about the breast cancer? You know, search, check, and see. See if you feel a lump, you know, and things of that nature. So
right,
even when it comes to our physical being, we want to go check. And even if we feel fine, just because you feel fine doesn't mean that
right,
you are. Just because the
right,
car is driving smoothly at a certain point doesn't mean there's not something wrong with it at that
right,
point. You don't want
right,
to wait till it breaks down or cuts off on you on
right.
the freeway to realize, oh man, there's a problem, because at that point it's too late. You know, it
Yeah,
might, your alternator done went out,
yeah, that
you
axle's
know,
gotta go. Right.
and,
Yeah,
and boy, you don't want to go through that.
right.
Expensive. And
Yeah,
so if you get checkups, you can catch something and may save you a big medical bill down the road. Unless, you know, you go through something and it's too late. It's like, man, this is third level, fourth level. It's
yeah,
really bad. Now you got a
right.
big medical bill that's here. So and it might be that much more harder to remedy. So, you know,
That's
people need to
exactly
keep that in respect to, you know, I thought about that scripture, search me, oh God, and see if there be. And
right.
so that's what we have to do in the physical sense as well.
Amen. So, brother, let me ask you this. And those of you who are listening, think about this question. Do you say, hey, I didn't hear anything wrong with the tires or my U joints grinding. I didn't see any smoke coming from my hood. My engine light isn't on. I don't need to even check then, right? Because I've drove to work today. I don't see. Do you say I'm going to forego the check on that engine? I'm going to forego the check on those brakes because I didn't.
So
Did you do
daily
that?
inspections,
Yeah,
daily
man.
inspections.
Daily inspection. That's right. Now imagine this. For those of you who believe it, how many of you hope that your pilot and the engineers check the plane before you take off? Or do you just say, oh,
You
well,
better.
we'll wait until there's smoke coming out of our wing before we go ahead? No, brother, you better check that thing,
Yeah.
because that's actually, for those of you who have ever been delayed, that's actually what's going on many times. Hey, we happen to find something before it's a problem. That's why we got to wait the 20 minutes, get engineering out here, say it's okay, or get you a new plane.
And I don't mind the wait.
Hey, right? 30,000 feet in the air.
That's
Oh,
40,000
look at that
reasons.
smoke
I don't
coming
want
out.
to. Yeah.
Right, we don't need to wait on it. Let me tell you a story about that. As a young man, and Kobe, I think you'd be a little closer to the age than me and Pastor Blue. We're kind of a little bit past that, but the young men, testicular cancer, that's something that we don't mess around with. We had a man come in, he was 20 years old, 20. And he said, oh, I just need to get checked because I found something. And he hadn't been in to get a checkup in close to 7 years. And when he finally came in, he had stage 4 testicular cancer. That means that cancer had started in his testicles and now was all the way up into his lungs. And we were at the time checking to see if it had gone to his brain. The tragedy of that is that 90% of the cancer, 90% of testicular cancer, if you catch it early in time, we can make it go away. 90%. The problem with testicular cancer is, in order to catch it in the stage 1, it doesn't feel like anything. If you say, hey man, how does testicular cancer feel like? Oh, do you lose weight, have these fevers at night that you're not infected, have this pain down in your nothing. It feels like nothing. That's the problem. So if you're not getting checked, 5 years later, you come in and hope that we can do something about this cancer that's now stage 4, where if you had been faithful all the way along and get checked every year, hey, we found this lump. Hey, we need to get that thing checked by either an ultrasound or some kind of biopsy that can right now, if we take it now, it has not gone past that pelvis. That's the bad thing. And boys, come on, look at us. Guys, it's easy for us to say, I'm fine, I don't need to. Testicular cancer doesn't feel like anything. You don't lose weight until later. You don't have any pain. You don't have problems peeing. Nothing like that until you're stage 4.
And one of the things people need to be aware of as well is their family history, because you may not feel anything, but if you know that in your family there's been a pattern of diabetes, cancer, and whatever, then I may feel fine, but you need to know, like, genetically, I can come down, and even if I don't have the same lifestyle as them, I've seen people, that, well, I've changed up my diet, and they thought, well, I'm not going to get what grandma had or what my mama had or what my dad had because I switched up and I don't have the same lifestyle. Yet genetically, you can still be exposed to those things, and people need to be aware of that.
Right. That's something that everybody needs to be mindful of, because I have to know, even though I eat a certain way, even though I exercise and other people look at me as healthy, I have to remember that my grandfather passed away with colon cancer and prostate cancer complications, both sides. So I need to check, even if I'm eating as obediently as I know how. The fact of the matter is we're 6,000 years out. That's
along those lines, just for folks to know, if there's a family history and you start dealing with, colon cancer, cancers in the family and so forth, typically doctors will say you need to come in earlier to get your tests and examinations. And so if there's a history of breast cancer, there's a history of colon cancer, and your history of diabetes and so forth, the urgency of being able to follow up is that, okay, well, maybe at 50 is the time that you'll come in and to get your first colonoscopy for most people. Right. Then it push you back and say, well, no, you know what, based on this history, you're in your 40s, 45. Let's check you out, make sure everything is fine. And again, we know that no one will catch everything, because I know that there'll be people say, well, my friend went to the doctor and blah, 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 and they weren't able to catch it, or they didn't see it and diagnose it. We're not saying that doctors are perfect. Doctors are finite human beings just like you and I and everyone else. But they're going to use the best, generally speaking, they're going to use the best resources, their best talent, bring their love and their passion and their dedication to be able to try to make sure that their patients are fine. So that's really what we want to focus in on. But to certainly ignore it, as the examples are like with the car, and you just say, hey, I'm driving, everything feels fine. That's a problem. And one thing that we also do as well, sometimes as human beings, think, oh, well, I'm feeling some discomfort, but it'll go away. We're not saying go in at every beck and call with something, but you should have a general feel. One, you have a general feel of your body to know when something seems different, something doesn't feel right, and then to monitor that over a period of time to see, is it improving, is it staying the same, is it getting worse? And then, of course, maybe it gets better. But then when you have that annual checkup, I can come in and say, hey, Dr. Graza, a couple of months back, I had this particular situation. It's gone away, but I want to just bring it to your attention. So, and to me, it may not be anything. It could just be, I had like a little sensation in my arm, and it's gone. And he's, she asked questions. Again, going back to that whole thing, because the Bible text, I was thinking about with Paul, he said, those that compare themselves among themselves are not wise. So I'm using my health as my standard. And if I'm looking at you, and you're on 15 meds and you're the same age as I am, you're the same age that I am, and I'm not taking anything. Like I'm definitely good, because look at him, look at her. They're on 15 meds. They can only walk a block. I'm good. I can run a marathon and so forth. That does not necessarily define health. And having that conversation, being able to talk with a qualified medical provider, they can look and say, well, tell me, what were the symptoms like when you had that? And to us, as you know, we're feeling good. This is, you know, in the past, and we start describing it, and maybe they are concerned because it's like, well, hey, what you described to me, that sounds like you maybe had a mini stroke. What you described to me sounds like it could have been like a mild heart attack. Let's do an EKG. Let's
Do a stress
examine
test.
and
Let's
see.
at least look, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we should be mindful of it. You know, quickly, my dad died, I think he was like 51 years of age. And he, you know, he had a blood clot that started in his foot. And for various reasons, he, you know, he went into the doctor to be able to look and to find out what was going on. They identified it, and they were going to do a procedure, you know, have prep to be able to get it taken care of. And for various reasons, didn't do it, put it off. That clot ended up moving and traveling. You know, it's going to travel. If it doesn't disintegrate, it's going to travel, and so it traveled all the way up. You know, so if it gets up into your chest, you're going to have a heart attack. If it goes bypasses, you're going to have a stroke. Unfortunately, he had the latter. He had a stroke. Why do I share that? Because again, that was largely preventable. You know, once they found it, I remember he would complain to my mom and saying, you know, he would walk a little distance and his leg would get tired. So again, sometimes you can have these things. You're like, you know what, maybe it's just, you know, a cramp and I've just ignored and so forth. And it didn't happen all the time, but it's important to be able to follow through. So I would maybe switch real quick and say, because I know that some people say, well, you know, doctors are expensive. It's expensive to go to the doctors. It's a racket. They just want all your money. They want you to come in to write a bunch of prescriptions because they got to pay for the BMW. They got to pay for their schooling. They need to pay for their lifestyle. And they're just, you know, pimps of the pharmaceutical industry, and they're getting kickbacks. So they just want to get you full of drugs and so forth and so on. So we've already answered that in a different piece. Okay. But I want to ask you, Dr. Garraza, if there is a situation where you know, finances are really tight. Don't say finances are tight, but I can go out to a restaurant like every other day, you know, right? So I'm talking about true situations where, like, you know, hey, I only have a couple $100. And again, you know, a labor's worthy of his hire. What would you establish as, you know, hey, if you need to go in and you're really on a limited income, what would be some of the things that a person would be wise to inquire about, to find out about? You know, if that's just a general checkup, would be maybe the best thing, or to say, well, hey, you know, let me get my blood work done. You know, whatever the case may be, just to be able to get some type of baseline. Well, of course, you had to have a baseline you need to come in regularly to establish a baseline to see what are some things that you could quickly let us know would be mindful or beneficial for a person to come in to ask a physician when they are coming in, especially in a case where they're saying, hey, I feel good. You know, haven't been in 15 years. And some people wear it as a badge of honor. You know, I haven't been to see a doctor in 50 years, you know, so forth. But what are some things that maybe we could ask or should ask that could be helpful for us, as well as for the physicians who will be treating us?
So that answer to that question is actually going to be different at each stage of life. So the events that cause injury and the events that cause death are different all the way until right around 40. So let's say before 40, somewhere there, really it's like 40 or 50 is the transition. Before that, a lot of your injury and your disease, short of some freak cancer, are going to be safety things. So motor vehicle accidents, injury of some kind with like a mechanical something. All right. And then lifestyle choices, drugs, alcohol, smoking, these kind of things. So that's going to build up to the answer that I'm going to get to. So after, let's say around 50, now you're starting to watch things wear down a little bit more. So when one goes to the physician, so let's say you don't have a lot of income, there still should be, because we live in the United States, there still should be something where you can sign up with a state-funded organization, so something like Medicare, Medicaid, that sort of thing, just even for the exam should be enough. And if you really want to push it to the minimal, at least once every 2 years. And as you get up to the 55, 60, then it really should be every year. But you can kind of get away with that. If you're really strapped for cash, you can get away with every other year. Now they're going to be, their job is actually to go through all the questions. But if they don't get through the questions, what you need to be looking for is certain kind of regularity and function. Now, I know this sounds cliche, but the way you go to the bathroom, how regular is that? Hey, doc, I do this and this. And what might be normal to you, you let them know all the details, and no details is too much. So everybody kind of makes fun about TMI too much. There's no such thing. They should ask you about your stooling and your waking and your sleeping habits. How much do you wake up at night? Is there something that's causing you to have to clear your throat all the time? Is your vision going bad? Are you losing your smell? Is it difficult to swallow now? Do you get a burning when you lay down after you swallow? Those kind of things they have to ask all those, and they have a systematic way of asking from the head to toe all the things that they need to ask during their annual checkup. So I know we want to be able to be mindful and ask. Talk to them about pains that keep you from doing something. Those are the important things. Pains that keep you from doing something, functions that you thought were normal, but no longer are, one, easy, two, no longer are capable. Now, here's the problem. If you, as you get older, go with a spouse or a good friend who knows you, because some things like dementia are things that we can't see within ourselves. That's something that somebody needs to point out to us. Hey, man, not as sharp as you used to. You keep forgetting. No, man, I don't. I'm fine. Dementia is something that somebody else has a diagnosis. No one sits around and says, hey, I don't remember as much as dementia is rarely a self-diagnosis. So having a friend or somebody else tell you, hey, listen, that's something we've been kind of forgetting lately, or that sort of thing. And then the other obvious things, like, well, obvious to me, ability to go to the bathroom, number one, to urinate, or number two, to stool, to get up every morning. How long does it take to recover from a strenuous activity? What is it like when you're breathing? Is it easy to go up steps? So one of the stories goes that this gentleman, he was getting older, and he said, and he had attributed to simply just getting older and not being fit. And he was being winded as he went upstairs. As it turned out, he had a series of small heart attacks, and his heart function had reduced down to something like 60%. And that's why he was having difficulty walking upstairs, not because he was older, but because he had these, oh, did you have this and this and this? Now they got to ask more questions that the doctor should know, any doctor worth their salt. So the normal standard things about function and pain are the good places to start. And then family history. So those things should always be at your forefront. Hey, doc, I have this in the family. Then they should have, if they made it through their education, they should have a series of questions for them to ask about your own function, what tests they can do, and then leave it at that. I know some people who are listening to this podcast, or some people even in my own family, are very skeptical about the healthcare, but the diagnostics is without question. It's a treatment that we have difficulty with sometimes, but the diagnostics are without. There's no other way to get around the diagnostics. Diagnostics are good. They're careful and they're mindful and they're thoughtful. It's the treatment that we have questions about sometimes, that some people don't trust. Does that help answer the question?
It does thoroughly. And I do appreciate you elaborating on that. So I think really good information, some things to be able to take practically and then be able to put into place. And certainly, if you're in a position, if you have insurance, and say, hey, absolutely every single year, go in and get that annual exam. We can't stress that enough. Go in there, take your family and your kids in, everybody. Hey, let's go in and get checked out. And then again, if maybe I don't have it, you pointed out some idea, some options. And here in California, Medi-Cal, you certainly be able to take advantage of that, to be able to go in, so that it really removes the excuse of saying, I'm not going to go in. So definitely go in, find out, as we've learned today, that there are a number of things that can be identified early on. And if we can catch these things early enough, then many times the solution could be very simple. Okay, we talked about in the extent of, okay, maybe there could be an expense to it, but these are things that can save your life.
Right.
You wait too long, it's there's an irrevocable decree of sorts had gone forth. There's nothing that can be done. And we don't want to be in that situation where we have the conversation and say, well, hey, if you would have just come in, a year ago, 6 months ago, 12, whatever, then we could have done something different. We don't want to have that conversation. We want to try to stay engaged, stay on top of things, because we only have one body. And when it's gone, it is gone. And every day we're on the earth, it's a blessing, but certainly every day we're on the earth, one day closer to death in that respect. So I think that does elaborate the point you shared. So thank you very much. And unfortunately, we've used up our time for today. So I want to thank you again for tuning in for another episode of Issues of the Heart. I want to remind you to keep your heart with all diligence, because out of it are the issues of life.